You rented out my apartment. I said it slowly, each word a separate sentence, because I needed them to understand that I wasn't asking. I wasn't confused. I was telling them what I already knew, what I'd already confirmed, what I had documented proof of. My mother blinked twice, looked at my father, and this is the part that still makes my blood boil to this day. She smiled. She actually smiled and said, "Honey, we were helping you. You were in no condition to handle your bills." I stared at her for a long moment, then pulled a folder out of my bag. "Then where's the money?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Let me back up. My name is Derek. I'm 31 years old, and I work as a structural engineer for a mid-sized civil engineering firm in Portland, Oregon. I make about $87,000 a year before taxes, which isn't extravagant, but it's honest money earned through years of grinding. Community college, state university, unpaid internships, and about 4 years of working jobs I hated before I landed where I am now. I bought my apartment, a 2-bedroom condo in a decent neighborhood, when I was 27. It cost me $310,000, and I put down $62,000 that I had saved over 6 years by living in a studio the size of a walk-in closet and eating rice and beans 4 nights a week. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you this because everything that happened next only makes sense if you understand what that apartment meant to me. It wasn't just a home. It was proof. Proof that I could build something on my own without anyone's help, especially without my parents' help. Growing up, I was the middle child in a family of 3. My older brother, Marcus, was the golden child, star athlete, scholarship to a good school, always the first name out of my parents' mouths at family gatherings. My younger sister, Leah, was the baby, coddled, protected, excused from every responsibility until she was well into her 20s. And then there was me, Derek, the quiet one, the one who didn't cause problems, which apparently also meant the one who didn't deserve attention. I'm not saying my parents were monsters. They weren't. They fed me, clothed me, kept a roof over my head. But there's a particular kind of neglect that comes from simply being overlooked, and if you've experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not dramatic, it's not cinematic, it's just silence. It's your parents forgetting to come to your science fair because Marcus had a game. It's your birthday dinner being rescheduled 3 times because something came up with Leah. It's hearing your mother say at Thanksgiving, in front of everyone, "Derek's always been so independent, he never needed us." And everyone nods like it's a compliment, and you sit there thinking, I didn't choose to be independent. You just never showed up. By the time I was 18, I had learned the lesson my family was teaching me, whether they meant to or not. You are on your own. So I acted accordingly. I worked 2 jobs through college. I never asked for a dime. When Marcus got a $15,000 graduation gift from our parents and Leah got her first car paid for, a used Honda Civic, but still, I got a card with $50 in it and a note that said, "We're so proud of you." I kept that card for years, not because it meant something to me, because I wanted to remember it. I wanted to remember exactly what I was worth to them in dollars and cents. But here's the thing about being the forgotten middle child. You get really, really good at taking care of yourself, and by the time I was 27 and signing the papers on my condo, I had something none of them had. I had stability. Real stability. Not the kind that comes from someone else's money or someone else's approval, but the kind you build brick by brick with your own hands. My parents barely acknowledged it. My mum said, "That's nice, honey," when I told her. My dad asked if I was sure I could afford it. Marcus didn't even call. Leah asked if she could use it when I was traveling. I want to be fair. Despite all of that, I didn't hate my family. I wasn't bitter, or at least I tried not to be. I showed up for holidays. I called on birthdays. I sent gifts. I maintained the relationship because I believed, maybe naively, that family is family, and that even imperfect love is still love. I think part of me was always hoping that one day they'd see me, really see me. And maybe, just maybe, they'd say, "We should have been there for you more." They never said it. Instead, what they did was so much worse. It was a Tuesday in October when everything changed, October 14th to be exact. I was driving home from a site inspection when a delivery truck ran a red light and T-boned my car on the driver's side. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the sound. I remember waking up in a hospital room 3 days later with a shattered left femur, 4 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, and a concussion that made the fluorescent lights feel like they were drilling into my skull. The doctors told me later that I was lucky to be alive. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like someone had disassembled me and put me back together wrong. The recovery was brutal. I was in the hospital for 19 days, then transferred to an inpatient rehabilitation facility for another 23. 6 weeks of my life, gone. I couldn't walk, I couldn't drive, I could barely sit up without my ribs screaming. My world shrank to the size of a hospital bed and the 4 walls around it. I had short-term disability through my employer, which covered 60% of my salary, about $4,350 a month after taxes, and my health insurance covered most of the medical bills, though the co-pays and deductibles were still adding up to something terrifying. I had savings, but they were draining fast. My parents came to visit me in the hospital exactly 4 times, 4 times in 6 weeks. Marcus came once, stayed for 20 minutes, and spent most of it on his phone. Leah didn't come at all. She sent a text that said, "OMG, are you okay?" Sending prayers, with 3 heart emojis. I stared at that text for a long time. During my hospital stay, my mother offered to take care of things at my apartment. She said she'd water the plants, check the mail, make sure nothing went wrong. I was grateful, genuinely grateful. I gave her my spare key and the code to the building entrance, and I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is them finally stepping up. I should have known better. God, I should have known better. Here's what I didn't know. What I wouldn't find out for another 3 weeks. While I was lying in a hospital bed learning how to walk again, my parents rented out my apartment. My apartment, the one I bought with my own money, the one with my name on the deed, the one filled with my furniture, my books, my clothes, my life. They moved my personal belongings into a storage unit, a unit they rented in my name, by the way, using the mail they were supposedly checking to intercept statements. And they listed my apartment on a short-term rental platform, not Airbnb, a local vacation rental site where listings were harder to trace. They charged $175 a night for 6 weeks, 6 weeks at an average occupancy of about 80%. That comes out to roughly $5,880, nearly $6,000. My money, earned off my property. While I was in a hospital gown, learning to bend my knee again. The way I found out was almost comically mundane. My neighbor, Paul, a retired electrician in his 60s who I'd always gotten along with, sent me a text about a week after I got home. I was back in my apartment by then, and things seemed off. Not obviously wrong, but subtly different. A scratch on the kitchen island I didn't remember. A stain on the couch cushion. The bathroom smelled like someone else's soap. I chalked it up to paranoia, maybe the lingering effects of the concussion messing with my memory. Then Paul texted, "Hey Derek, glad you're home. Hope you're feeling better. Quick question. Are you done with the Airbnb thing? The last group was pretty loud on the weekend, and Brenda almost called the HOA." I read that text 17 times. I called Paul immediately. He was confused. "Your folks didn't tell you? They had people in and out the whole time you were gone. I just assumed you knew. They said you asked them to do it to cover your medical bills." I sat on my couch with the stain that wasn't mine, and I felt something I can only describe as cold rage. Not hot, not explosive. Cold, calculated. The kind of anger that doesn't make you yell, it makes you plan. The first thing I did was check my bank accounts. No deposits. Not a single dollar from any rental income had been deposited into any account with my name on it. I checked my credit card statements. Nothing. I checked my Venmo, my PayPal, my Zelle. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Wherever that money went, it didn't come to me. The second thing I did was call the vacation rental platform. It took me 3 calls and about 2 hours of being transferred between departments, but I finally got connected to someone who could help. I explained the situation. I told them my property had been listed without my authorization. They were able to pull up the listing. It was under my mother's name, Linda Harding, with her email and her bank account for payouts. The total payouts over the 6-week period, $5,142.50, after the platform service fees. Almost $6,000 deposited directly into my mother's personal checking account. I asked the platform to send me documentation of the listing, the payout history, and any communications associated with the account. They said they'd need to verify my identity as the property owner, which I provided: deed, property tax records, HOA statements, all of it. Within 48 hours, I had a full report. Every booking, every payout, every message my mother had sent to guests, cheerfully describing a lovely two-bedroom condo in a quiet Portland neighborhood, perfect for couples or small families. She used my throw pillows in the listing photos. My grandmother's quilt was on the bed. The plants she was supposed to be watering were arranged decoratively on the windowsill. I didn't call my parents right away. I know that might sound strange, but I needed time. I needed to think. I needed to make sure that when I confronted them, I had everything. Because I knew deep in my bones, that they would lie, they would minimize, they would rearrange reality until what they did sounded reasonable, even generous. We were helping you, Derek. I could already hear it. So I spent 3 days preparing. I printed every document. I organized them in a folder. I consulted with a lawyer, a friend of a friend who specialized in property law, and asked her what my options were. She was appalled. She said what they did could potentially constitute unauthorized use of property, fraud, and depending on how they handled my mail and personal belongings, possibly identity-related offenses. She told me I had a strong civil case at minimum. I thanked her and told her I'd be in touch. Then I called my mother and asked if she and Dad could come over for dinner on Saturday. "Oh, that sounds lovely, honey. Are you feeling well enough to cook? I can bring something." "No," I said. "I've got it." Saturday came. I cleaned my apartment, cooked a simple pasta, aglio e olio, nothing fancy, but I made garlic bread from scratch because some part of me still wanted this to be civilized. My parents arrived at 6:15, 15 minutes late, which was standard for them. My dad was wearing his usual weekend uniform, khakis and a polo shirt. My mum had brought a bottle of wine, a cheap Pinot Grigio that she always bought because she once read it was versatile. We sat down, we ate, we made small talk. My mum asked about physical therapy, my dad asked about work. Neither of them asked how I was really doing. They never did. At about 7:30, when the plates were mostly empty and my mum was on her second glass of wine, I set the folder on the table. "So," I said, "I want to talk about something." My mum glanced at the folder. "What's that?" "That's a record of every booking made on my apartment through Pacific Northwest Getaways between October 17th and November 28th. 23 bookings. Total payout $5,742.50. Deposited into an account belonging to Linda Harding." I looked at her. "That's you, Mum." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. My dad set his fork down. My mum's smile didn't disappear. It froze. It stayed on her face like a mask, and behind it I could see her calculating. I'd seen that look before. It was the look she got when she was figuring out how to spin something. "Derek," she said slowly, "we were helping you." "Helping me?" "Yes. You were in the hospital. You had bills. We didn't want you to come home to financial stress on top of everything else." "Then where's the money?" She blinked. "What?" "The $5,742. "Where is it?" "Because it's not in my bank account. I checked. It's in yours." My dad shifted in his chair. "Now, Derek, let's not blow this out of proportion." "Out of proportion. You rented out my property without my knowledge or consent, moved my belongings into a storage unit you opened in my name without my authorization, and kept every dollar of rental income. Which part of that is proportional?" My mother's smile finally cracked. "We had expenses, Derek. The storage unit cost money. We had to clean the place between guests. Your father took time off work to manage the key exchanges. How much did the storage unit cost?" She hesitated. "I don't have the exact number." "I do. I found the statements. You opened it at StoreSafe on Burnside. The monthly rate for the unit you chose is $118. For 6 weeks, that's roughly $283. Cleaning supplies, let's be generous, another $100. Key management, you live 20 minutes away, that's gas money, so let's call all your expenses $500, being extremely generous. That still leaves over $5,200 unaccounted for. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Where is my money? My mother looked at my father, he looked at the table, and that's when I knew they had spent it. We had our own bills, Derek, my dad said quietly. Your own bills. Marcus needed help with his car payment. And Leah's lease was coming up, and she didn't have the security deposit. I held up my hand. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. While I was in the hospital with broken bones and a collapsed lung, you illegally rented out my apartment, kept the income, and used it to pay Marcus's car note and Leah's security deposit. Don't say illegally, Derek. We're your parents. That doesn't give you the right to use my property without my permission. Being my parents doesn't make what you did legal, or moral, or even remotely acceptable. My mum's voice went sharp. You have always been like this. Always keeping score. Always making everything transactional. We are your family. We were trying to help. And this is how you thank us? I sat back in my chair and let out a long breath. Mum, you weren't trying to help me. If you were trying to help me, the money would be in my account. If you were trying to help me, you would have asked. You didn't ask because you knew I'd say no. You did this because you saw an opportunity. My accident was convenient for you. That last sentence hit different. I could see it land. My mother's mouth opened and closed. My father's face went red. How dare you, my mum whispered. How dare I? How dare you? I was fighting to breathe through a tube, and you were posting listing photos of my living room. She stood up. I think we should go. Sit down, Mom. Something in my voice made her sit back down. Maybe it was the calm. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I was speaking in the same tone I use when I'm presenting structural load analyses to clients. Measured, precise, final. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You are going to return every cent. $5,742.50. You have 30 days. Derek, we don't have... Then figure it out. The same way I've been figuring things out my entire life. Without help. My dad stood up this time. This is ridiculous. We're not going to be extorted by our own son. It's not extortion, Dad. It's a demand for the return of stolen funds. And if you'd like to test that distinction, I have a lawyer who would be happy to explain it to you in a courtroom. The word courtroom changed the atmosphere entirely. My mother went pale. My father sat back down. You wouldn't, my mum said. Try me. They left 20 minutes later. The wine bottle was still on the table, half full. The garlic bread was cold. I sat alone in my apartment that strangers had slept in, eaten in, lived in while I was gone. And I felt a strange mix of devastation and relief. Devastation because I had just confirmed what I'd always suspected. To my parents, I wasn't a person. I was a resource. And relief because I finally had proof, and proof meant I could stop pretending. The next 48 hours were predictably chaotic. My mother called me 9 times on Sunday. I let every call go to voicemail. The messages progressed from conciliatory, Derek, sweetie, let's talk about this calmly, to defensive, you're twisting everything, you know we love you, to aggressive, your father is devastated, I hope you're happy, you've always been selfish. I saved every voicemail, documentation. Marcus called me on Monday morning. That was fast. Bro, what is going on? Mom's crying and saying you're threatening to sue them. Did she tell you why? She said something about your apartment and some rental thing, but it sounds like a misunderstanding. Marcus, they rented out my apartment while I was in the hospital and used the money to pay your car note. Did you know about that? Long pause. She said you asked her to handle it. I didn't. Another pause. Well, I mean, it was only a few $1,000s, man. Is it really worth tearing the family apart over? Only a few $1,000s. The words rang in my ears. Marcus, if someone rented out your house without your permission while you were in the hospital and gave the money to me, would you call it only a few $1,000s? He didn't answer. That's what I thought. Leah texted me that night. Her message was long and emotional and full of exclamation points. The gist was, Mum and Dad made a mistake. Families forgive each other. I was being cruel by threatening legal action, and also she really needed that security deposit because her credit was bad, and she couldn't have gotten the apartment without it. So couldn't I just let it go? I replied with one sentence. "You're welcome for the apartment, Leah. I didn't know I was paying for it." She didn't respond. By Wednesday, I'd received a letter from my parents, an actual physical letter handwritten by my mother on her monogrammed stationery. In it, she acknowledged that perhaps we should have communicated better and offered to repay $2,000 as a gesture of good faith, with the rest to be discussed as a family. She also wrote, and I'm paraphrasing here because the exact words make me too angry to repeat, that she hoped I would remember all the years of love and sacrifice they'd given me and not throw away my family over money. I called my lawyer. "They're offering partial repayment," I told her. "Don't accept partial," she said immediately. "If you accept $2,000 now, they'll use that as evidence that the matter was settled. You want the full amount. And honestly, Derek, you should consider whether you want to pursue additional damages. Unauthorized use of your property, the storage unit opened in your name without consent. Potential issues with your HOA, short-term rentals might violate your building's covenants." She was right. I hadn't even thought about the HOA angle. I checked my condo association's rules that night. Sure enough, Section 14.3 of the CC&Rs explicitly prohibited short-term rentals of fewer than 30 days without board approval. My parents' little venture had violated the covenant. If the HOA found out, and given that Paul's wife Brenda had nearly reported it, I could be fined. Fined for something I didn't do. For something I didn't even know was happening. I wrote a formal letter to my parents through my lawyer. It was polite, professional, and devastating. It demanded the full $5,142.50 within 30 days. It outlined the potential legal consequences of their actions, including civil liability for unauthorized use of property, potential fraud charges related to the storage unit, and my right to pursue damages for any HOA fines or penalties resulting from their violation of the building's rental restrictions. It also noted that I had documentation of the rental listing, payout records, and communications, and that I was prepared to use them. I sent it certified mail. The response came not from my parents, but from Marcus, who showed up at my door unannounced on a Friday evening. "Can I come in?" I let him in. He looked around the apartment like he was seeing it for the first time. Maybe he was. He'd only visited twice since I bought it. "Mom and Dad are freaking out," he said. "Good. Derek, come on, you know them. They're not criminals. They don't think. They thought enough to set up a listing, manage bookings, coordinate key exchanges, and deposit the money into Mom's personal account. That's not a lack of thinking, Marcus. That's planning." He sat on the couch, the one with the stain, and rubbed his face. "What do you want? Like, what would make this go away?" The full amount returned, a written acknowledgement of what they did, and an apology. A real one. Not, "We're sorry you feel that way." An actual, "We were wrong and we're sorry." "And if they do all that, you'll drop the legal stuff?" "If they do all that within the 30-day window, yes." He nodded slowly. "I'll talk to them." 2 weeks went by. No payment, no acknowledgement, no apology. What I got instead was a Facebook post. My mother, my 63-year-old church-going, book club-attending mother, posted a long, rambling screed on Facebook about ungrateful children and the pain of being a loving parent whose sacrifices are thrown back in their face. She didn't name me directly, but she didn't have to. Every relative, every family friend, every person in her social circle knew exactly who she was talking about. The post got 47 comments. Most of them were variations of, "You're such a wonderful mother," and "Some kids don't deserve their parents." 3 of my cousins liked it. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in years commented, "Stay strong, Linda. God sees your heart." Can you imagine? God sees your heart, the heart that rented out her injured son's apartment and kept the money. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't comment. I didn't post my own side. Instead, I did something much more effective. I sent a private message to every single person who commented on that post. Everyone. 47 messages. Each one was identical. "Hi, name. I saw your comment on my mother's post. I want you to know the full story. While I was hospitalized for 6 weeks after a car accident, my parents rented out my apartment without my knowledge or consent, earned $5,142.50 in rental income, and deposited every dollar into my mother's personal bank account. They used the money to pay my brother's car note and my sister's security deposit. I have documentation of every transaction. I have asked for the money to be returned. They have refused. I am not sharing this publicly because I believe in handling family matters privately, but I also believe in truth. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Within 12 hours, 23 of those 47 comments were deleted. My aunt took down her "God sees your heart" comment. 3 cousins unliked the post. My mother's phone, according to Marcus, wouldn't stop ringing. People wanted answers. People wanted to know if it was true. And my mother, who had spent her whole life carefully curating her image as the long-suffering, devoted, selfless matriarch, was suddenly on the defensive. She called me at 9:14 a.m. on a Wednesday. I answered this time. "What did you do?" Her voice was shaking. I told the truth. "You had no right. You posted first, Mom. I just provided context. You're destroying this family." "No, Mom. You destroyed it when you rented out my apartment and kept the money. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen." She hung up. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window. Portland was grey and drizzling, which felt appropriate. The fallout over the next 2 weeks was something I never could have predicted. My cousin Tara, Marcus's age, someone I'd always been friendly with but never close to, called me out of the blue. She told me that after reading my message, she'd started talking to other family members, and a pattern had emerged. Apparently, my parents had a history of this kind of thing that I didn't even know about. My uncle Robert, my dad's brother, told Tara that 10 years ago, my parents had borrowed $8,000 from him for an emergency and never paid it back. My Aunt Gloria said my mother had taken jewelry from their mother's estate, my grandmother's estate. That was supposed to be divided equally among the siblings, claiming she was keeping it safe, and never returned it. Another cousin mentioned that my parents had borrowed camping equipment, tools, and even a trailer from various family members over the years, and either never returned them or returned them damaged. I wasn't the first person they'd done this to. I was just the first person who had documentation. On day 26 of the 30-day deadline, my father called. Not my mother, my father. This was significant because my dad almost never called me directly. Everything went through Mom. "Derek," his voice was tired. "Your mother and I would like to meet with you, just us, no lawyers. Will you have the money? We'll have a check." "For the full amount?" Long pause. "Yes." We met at a coffee shop near my apartment on a Saturday morning. Neutral territory. My dad looked like he'd aged 5 years in a month. My mum looked like she'd been crying. Part of me, the little kid who just wanted his parents to show up, felt a pang of guilt. But I pushed it down. Guilt is a weapon that manipulative people count on. I wasn't going to hand it to them. My dad slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a cashier's check for $5,142.50. The full amount. "Thank you," I said. "We're also sorry," my dad said. He said it looking at the table, not at me. "We shouldn't have done it. It was wrong." I looked at my mum. She was gripping her coffee cup so hard her knuckles were white. "Linda," my dad said quietly. "I'm sorry," she said. The words came out like they were being pulled from her by force. "I'm sorry we rented your apartment. I'm sorry we kept the money. I'm sorry we didn't ask. Are you sorry you spent it on Marcus and Leah instead of me? Or are you sorry you got caught?" She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw something behind her eyes that might have been genuine shame. "Both," she whispered. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. I deposited the check the next day. I called my lawyer and told her I wouldn't be pursuing further legal action on one condition. If anything like this ever happened again, the gloves were off. She drafted a letter to that effect. My parents signed it. But here's the thing about a crack in a foundation. And I should know, it's literally my job. Once it's there, you can patch it. You can reinforce it. You can monitor it. But you can never make it as strong as it was before the damage. The relationship with my parents didn't end that day in the coffee shop, but it fundamentally changed. I changed the locks on my apartment. I revoked my mother's access to everything. No spare key, no building code, no access to my mail, nothing. I set up a security camera system. I put my property in a trust, with my lawyer as the trustee, so that no one could ever use it without my explicit written consent again. Marcus and I don't really talk anymore. Not because of a big blow-up, but because the conversation we should have had, the one where he acknowledged that he benefited from what they did and that he should have spoken up, never happened. He just faded. We went from occasional texts to nothing. Last I heard, he's still making his car payments. I hope that car was worth it. Leah sent me a check for $400 2 months later with a note that said, "This is what I can afford right now. I'll pay more when I can." She never did. I cashed the check and didn't follow up. $400. That's what my sister thinks her integrity is worth. That's fine. At least she tried, which is more than Marcus did. My relationship with my extended family, surprisingly, improved. The messages I'd sent, the ones that pulled back the curtain on my parents' behavior, opened a dam. Uncle Robert finally confronted my dad about the $8,000. Aunt Gloria started asking questions about the jewelry. Cousin Tara and I became genuinely close. She told me once, over dinner, "You know, Derek, I always thought you were the cold one in the family. Turns out you were just the one who wasn't playing along." As for my parents, we see each other at holidays now. Just holidays. The visits are short, polite, and surface level. My mum brings wine. My dad asks about work. Nobody mentions the apartment. Nobody mentions the money. There's a wall between us now, transparent but solid, and we all pretend it isn't there. Sometimes my mum will call me on a random Tuesday, and we'll talk for 10 minutes about nothing, and right before she hangs up, there's this pause. This long, loaded pause where I think she wants to say something real. Something that matters. But she never does. And I've stopped waiting. I still live in my apartment. I redid the floors last spring, partly because they needed it, and partly because I wanted to erase every trace of the strangers who'd walked through my home. I bought a new couch. The stain is gone. The quilt, my grandmother's quilt, I had professionally cleaned and stored properly in a cedar chest at the foot of my bed. Some things are too precious to leave in other people's hands. Looking back, I used to think the worst part of this whole story was the money. It wasn't. The worst part was the confirmation. All those years of feeling invisible, of being the afterthought, the one who didn't need anything, the one who could handle it, this was the proof. My parents didn't rent out my apartment because they were trying to help me. They rented it out because, on some fundamental level, they didn't think of my things as really mine. They didn't think of my space as really my space. They didn't think of me as really separate from them. I was an extension, a resource, a utility. And when I was out of commission, they used what I had built the same way they'd always used me, without asking, without thinking, and without guilt. But here's the thing they didn't count on. I had been building something they couldn't take. Not just the apartment, not just the savings. I had been building myself, my independence, my self-respect, my ability to stand in a room with the people who were supposed to love me most and say, "No, this is mine. You don't get to take it." And if that makes me the cold one, the transactional one, the ungrateful one, fine. I'd rather be all of those things than be the person who rents out their son's apartment while he's learning to walk again and sleeps just fine at night. I sleep fine at night too, by the way. On my couch, in my apartment, with my grandmother's quilt folded at the foot of my bed and every door locked tight. Some people teach you how to love. My parents taught me how to protect what I love from the people who should have loved me the most. It's a bitter lesson, but it's mine. And nobody's renting it out.